Welcome to the Sci-Fi Center, the place to be, where comic books and wrestling collide magically. Movies, TV shows, and pop culture we share. Get ready to rock, we're here to take you there. From superheroes to aliens in outer space, we've got the latest news and reviews in our embrace. Turn on your screen, let the neon lights glow. We'll take you back to the 80s. Let's rock and roll. Sci-Fi Center, where the legends come alive. Get ready to geek out, let your imagination fly. We're diving into the past with a touch of modern flair. Sci-Fi Center, we go to let pop culture lair. Come on down and get your geek on gift at the Sci-Fi Center. We got almost everything a geek could want at the Sci-Fi Center. You name it, we got it. Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, DC, and everything in between at the Sci-Fi Center.
Happy Saturday and welcome to this weekend's watch party. It, in my opinion, is the most important comic book movie ever made. Now, when I say that, I don't mean it's the greatest comic book ever made, but it is the most important one. I've stated over and over and over again that 25 years ago, we weren't thinking MCU. We weren't thinking DCEU. We weren't thinking DCU. There was no James Gunn involved in comic book movies. There were no major comic book movies outside of Batman and solo, Superman movies. Even in the history of filmmaking, there had never really been a high-end ensemble cast, a high-end team movie that would be part of a world-building engine the way X-Men would become in 2000. And the reason why that is the case is that there had been no precedent for it. Everybody looked at the schematic for success as Batman, Superman, solo movies here and there, and then they would every now and then you would see them take a risk on a low-end IP that no one ever heard of, so that they weren't held accountable to accuracy or anything else. This is one of the reasons why some of the movies that came out in the 90s, most people don't even know that they were comic books. Blade, even though there's a lot of revisionist history on this very channel, nobody knew that Blade was a comic book. That most of the people that went to see that movie. The Crow, to this day, there are people who do know that was a comic book character. Road to Perdition, The Mask. So you didn't really have that type of comic book movie success outside of a handful of things. X-Men changed the game. X-Men showed not just Marvel, but everybody watching that over the next years, you could do these big team world building movies. And like I said, if it wasn't for X-Men, I don't think you have some of these movies that you have now. A lot of the people that ended up working on X-Men and part of the protection staff, if you look at the names, a lot of these credits that you see on some of these films today are people that came from Fox, that came from Sony, that came from these things that were pre-MCU, which is why it was such a seamless transition from those movies to what we have now. So, like I said, this is the most important comic book movie made. Don't get it conflated with the greatest, one made or the most highest quality made, because even with the the even with the advances and the ground that is broken in this film, it still has issues, and some of them don't age well. But the actual event itself, the actual accomplishment itself, doesn't change, regardless to whether there were better, more polished, more faster moving movies that came out. Those movies wouldn't have had a runway without X-Men 2000. All right, so when are you not buzzed? I struggle to understand when you're not high. So, how you doing, RJ? What's going on? Are you guys going to talk about Avengers Doomsday? And I may. I don't like jumping into concept stuff because it lends itself to bullshit. I mean, we'll take a look at it, but I'm going to be very careful on how I approach it. I'm as somebody who doesn't like where movie talk is right now, I don't want to be the person that misconstrues some of these things going out. So we're going to take a look at it. But I did see the leaks, and like I said, I think anybody who I think Marvel is a victim of their own success. I don't think there's been this big Marvel downturn. I think if you look at it, depending on what kind of numbers you're trying to compare it to, nobody in Marvel is looking at any single movie as a barometer of their success. They're looking at the entire body of their work. And right now, I would love to be, if I were a company doing comic book movies, I would cut off both arms and a foot to be where Marvel is right now. So yeah, we'll take a look at it tonight. I already planned the show, but I'm adding a segment to the show that's basically quick topics. We'll discuss real quick the Superman poster with the feet in the snow. We'll go into further detail about expectations for Green Lantern, but we're not going to spend too much time on it because there's not a lot of information about it. We'll have some kind of conversation. How you doing, Hank? What's going on? X-Men trilogy, yeah. Like I said, these are. Let me know if I'm coming through clear too, because I'm on the shitty internet. If I have to switch to the other one, I will, but it's kind of limited today. Like I said, the most important comic book movie made. I don't know if I'm going to have a co-host right now because this kind of pops in. Hold on. All right, so today's film is X-Men. We're gonna go ahead and get started because, like I said, it's a Saturday. It's a Saturday, so that any given time I can be taken away because I'm surprised we're able to pull these off on Saturday. I don't even know if it's a good idea we do these on Saturday afternoon because I'm getting busier and busier. Today in Vegas, the weather is perfect. I wish I could bottle this weather up and just keep it there. It's the 1st of March. We're headed into spring. Allergy season is going to tear up my respiratory system, but that's fine. And then we're going to brace ourselves for 110-degree heat every day until September. But I'm used to it at this point. But like I said, when you have a day like this where the weather is just perfect, people tend to come out. And even though we're open late hours, when it's good like this, people come in. All right. No, I saw these in the movies. And I saw them a few times afterwards. Yeah, X-Men is overrated because we look at the entire Marvel universe and Marvel movies through the lens of the MCU, fairly or unfairly. That's why we have revisionist history. We look at things right now, and like I said, I got clowns that come to me, hey, Blade was the beginning of the MCU, and if we didn't have Blade, we wouldn't have. And I openly laugh at them. They're not clowns, but they're just that's a clown opinion in my opinion. But so we look at things through the revisionist history of what the MCU is now. We don't realize that a lot of the DNA that would become the MCU started with this movie. Started with what Fox was doing in 2000 and what Sony would do with Spider-Man. But with the difference between what Sony was doing with Spider-Man and what X-Men were doing is, like I said, that team movie, that ensemble movie. The second most important one for me is going to be the Avengers 2012 movie because that showed you it worked. What 2000 X-Men showed you is that it could be done. What 2012 Avengers tells you is to what effect. is to what effect? The people who worked, many of the people who worked on 2000 X-Men, found their way into Disney Studios and Marvel Studios. And they learned these things. And they executed them in 2012. So 12 years after you had this movie we're about to watch, you had Avengers. Now, is Avengers the greatest comic book movie? No, but once again, it's the achievement and the accomplishment. It's one of the best experiences I've ever had in a movie theater, by the way, when seeing all those geeks there at Palms Theater. And we're all dressed up, and you got people with the big Hulk hands. I got a picture of it. We've shown up here. We look ridiculous, but we had fun. So, what platform? Okay, I am watching this on Disney Plus. No, that I am going to have to disagree with you. You can't say that a IP in Blade that the general public didn't know was a comic book movie vaulted you into anything. By the way, Blade didn't go into production until late 1996, mid 1997, and then it was released in 1998. Marvel had already had the rights, or Fox had already purchased the rights early '96 to do X-Men. So X-Men was going to happen whether Blade existed or not. That's just a fact. That's just a timetable. X-Men got released in 2000, but the rights, because remember, Marvel was in bankruptcy, headed towards bankruptcy in the mid-90s, and that's when they began selling off these IPs. So the road to X-Men began before, and as far as I know, before Blade. Nobody knew what Blade was. Blade was successful because Wesley Snipes in the 90s was gold. Wesley Snipes in the 1990s was box office gold. So you can't say that something that, an IP that no one knew was a comic propelled other comic book movies. That's just that. Now you have no data, you have no evidence to say, okay, if people knew Blade was a comic book movie and then they're like, okay, now we can make other comic book movies because the general public is buying into that. You can't really say that because it just wasn't the case. So no, you would have X-Men because X-Men was in pre-production before Blade was even greenlit.
Oh, I come in right when Blade talk starts.
Yeah, once again, I'm just reminding people of the revisionist history because we look at things through the MCU lens. We look backwards, and the facts aren't always there. Blade, it really didn't have anything to do with X-Men. X-Men was the one that Fox purchased because at that time, Fox had been eyeing trying to do an X-Men movie in the early 90s, but they just didn't have the rights, and the rights were too expensive. As Marvel's drifted towards bankruptcy, the price went down. They got X-Men, and Sony got Spider-Man for a steal.
And yeah, so go ahead.
You had the genesis of X-Men long before Blade. And once again, Blade was successful. But because Wesley Snipes, because you know why Blade was successful? Passenger 57, White Men Can't Jump, New Jack City, Demolition Man. That's why Blade was successful. Wesley Snipes, you could have put him in the fucking Muppets Caper Part 2, and people would have been like, you know what, this sounds like garbage, but it's Wesley Snipes. We're gonna go see it. That's why
now
Blade
I need that now. Now I need that Wesley in a Muppet movie.
And Spider-Man was right after that. Sony was eyeing Spider-Man long before Blade was even thought of as far as a movie IP. But once again, early 90s, mid 90s, the price was too high. They had to wait till the price of the IP went down and Marvel was drifting towards bankruptcy. And that's how they got those rights.
You might say they had to wait until the price was right. Hey, it's a lot. What's up, man?
Horrible. Hey, joke, what's up?
But, yeah, by the way, sorry I was behind. I was out run some errands real quick before the stream started. So have we started the movie yet?
No, I'm just answering some. It's actually a shorter movie. It's an hour 45 minutes, so we're going to be Infinity War was an experience I'll never forget, and Endgame to agree. I like the beginnings of the Infinity Saga. As it got bloated for me, and there was a bunch of movies that I could have just skipped in retrospect. But like I said, Avengers 2012, one of the greatest movie experiences I've ever had. And I've seen a lot of comic book movies, and nothing recreates that atmosphere. And we weren't really it was pre 2013 where we weren't crapping on movies before they were released yet. You just went to the movies and had fun. That would be the last one of those movies that we would ever have that. But yeah, the fans are fun. You could have a conversation about comic book movies without this brainless nonsense that we would go through for the next 10, 12 years. So yeah, I would put that up there.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I still remember my showing, my first time seeing Avengers, the Thursday night showing. I mean, it was so. Oh no, it was so like the anticipation. People, I mean, the parking lot was full. People were parking on the grass. I mean, at my theater. I mean, that's how much hype there was for it.
Hold on. Looking up something real quick.
I wish I could say I had anything published recently X-Men related that I could kind of plug on the watch party. Now, I did have something Daredevil related go up today though.
Spider-Man came out in 2002. To answer your question, X-Men came out in 2000. X-Men was, like I said, we joke about the Blade stuff because it's funny that you guys, like I said, have this new reality that didn't exist back in 1998. But in all seriousness, like I said, comic book movies where we're at right now started with the one we're about to watch. Because, like I said, it said that you could take this level of IP with this many people and build a world. What they started building in 2000 with X-Men was a world. Then they were doing different realities. They were doing time travel. They were basically doing things that later on will be done on a much higher scale. But this was the movie.
Well,
Spider-Man, like I said, they had comic book movies and Warner Brothers and all these other movies had already done solo superhero movies. That wasn't new. That wasn't an experiment. That wasn't something you needed to prove.
Yeah, unless I'm mistaken, I think X-Men is the first team movie. Comic book.
That's what I mean.
Wise.
Ensemble. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you want to be extremely technical, you could count the Corman Fantastic Four, but I'm not going to because it A was never publicly released and B was never intended to be publicly released.
Okay. I think this is fourth, and he's high. But whoever this is, there's drugs involved, I guess. I don't know. Without X-Men animated series, there would be no successful X-Men series. I'm trying to reduce my cussing on this thing, but I think my response to that.
No. I got a good thing to say. Are you effing stupid?
Yeah. For Man of Steel, yeah.
Set aside that I just don't have time for much comic book animation, especially the shit from the 90s. It's garbage, in my opinion. You can love it all you want. Continue to love it. My opinion shouldn't affect you. To put aside that fact, the audience that watches a cartoon is literally, if you can see this speck of dust on my hand in comparison to the hand itself, it's microscopic. Your audience for something like that is compared to a box office. Even the Marvel TV shows, their audiences are not as big as the ones that go to the movies. So it's you can't really say, and that's why when I always hear about people saying, well, when they do the X-Men, they should use the 1997 blueprint. I'm like, listen, can I put you on a spacecraft and put you in orbit and to have you stay there so that we can keep these IPs safe? Because that's a horrible idea, in my opinion. But yeah, it's the same thing. We keep running into the Batman Beyond, all that. Why haven't we got this movie? Because you may have watched it, and everybody who watches these cartoons thinks everybody in the entire universe has watched these cartoons. When you look at the actual verifiable numbers compared to a box office, hell, look at what Daredevil is. Daredevil was a popular show that ran for 3 seasons on the Pioneer streamer. And we are 10 years removed from the first episode that Daredevil dropped on Netflix. And the majority of people that I run into have not watched this show. That's Daredevil. That's live action. But when you start looking at what Marvel does, take the lowest end MCU movie and compare it to the audiences that are on any other platform. It's not even close. So yeah. An X-Men animated, like I said, is somebody who grew up with the Chris Claremont X-Men. That's all I got to say. I wish I could put you in my TARDIS and take you guys back to 1986 to 1991. And then, like I said, when I first heard of the X-Men cartoon was coming, I'm like, okay, is Chris Claremont involved? I mean, this is going to be great. I mean, I'm going to get this is, because X-Men in 1992 was on a high. It would stay that way. It wasn't until 1993, 1994 where X-Men still started to tail off. But when they were mentioning this cartoon, because we heard about the cartoon at Comic-Con, to be honest with you, and we heard about that they were developing in like 1990 when I went to Comic-Con. So we were hearing about the cartoon, and us X-Men collectors were like, oh, we couldn't wait to see this. Then I saw it, and I wish I could unsee it. I wish there was something a pill I could take to where it's like I could just say, hey, I need to unsee this, pop the pill, and I could unsee that in comparison to what, because remember, the type of X-Men stories that we were being led into was not that fluff that they put out in 1992. Sorry. All right, let's see. If they had an X-Men animated series in prime time, so it would have been canceled. Not prime, like a prime slot. I don't. No, I mean, when you say everyone, you got to realize everyone is in comparison to people who watch the cartoon. Like I said, everybody who watches the cartoon thinks everybody else watches these cartoons. We can't even. We're about to hit Daredevil Born Again next week. A high-end, high-leverage, big budget, comparatively, TV show. There are people that haven't even watched that. That Daredevil has been in a $1.5 billion movie, even though he was only in it for a second. So if we're still getting people to watch Daredevil now, imagine how many people were not watching these cartoons. It's just business, man. It's just it's just really right. You can, by the way, don't take my word for it. You can look; these numbers are public. These ratings are public. It wasn't like the streaming shit where they would hide the numbers. And network TV, the numbers are public. Nielsen ratings, those are public. All right, cool. So so I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. I am at all zeros. And Taladia, you want to go ahead and count us down?
All right, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. And guys, if I do sound a bit snuffled, it's because I've been ill the last couple of days.
I've been dealing with allergies. I'm surprised I can even stand up. Trying to get out of bed this morning after some couple of Benadryls to try me out. Ugh.
Well, try and be me and fast for a full day.
Oh yeah, Ramadan.
Yeah.
Yep. The opening of this is with the concentration camp was a statement.
Fred, I think you're on mute, by the way, because I barely can hear you.
Am I on mute?
Oh yeah. No, I flipped my switch down. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying it's like Taladia. I have actually done, because I've done a lot of intermittent fasting and time restricted eating is for dietary. I have done.
Guys, when it comes to this Punisher thing, until I see it, I still think we're going to end up with a Punisher series. That's just my personal opinion.
100%.
I would prefer a series.
By the way, I was a little bit behind getting mine started. Can you guys give me a timestamp?
All right, no problem. We just started.
We literally
1 minute, 30 seconds.
Okay,
we're at the concentration camp.
So we're just past the whole. That's something I always loved about the X-Men movies was the Cerebro intro. That was I thought it was such a cool staple.
Oh yeah.
Where it has like Cerebro, you go through the little eye hole, and it's like this is the beginning of the movie.
Oh, what? Okay, this is bullshit. I just gave you the timeline. Fox wanted X-Men forever. They just weren't gonna pay that early 90s money. They waited till mid 90s. Listen, movie studios that make live action, you guys may not want to hear this, and I'm going to drop one of my lesser F-bombs. They don't give a fuck about cartoons. The companies that own the IPs now, as you clearly see, Warner Brothers, don't give a fuck about a cartoon audience. They don't care. Why? Because I just gave you the reasons why. They're looking at box up. They're looking at millions on top of millions on top of millions that are willing to pay to see something. That's where their focus is. They're not going to use data from a cartoon. When you're making a movie like X-Men, when you're making something like this and you're making movies like the current comic book movies, you're looking for a medium. You want everybody in. You're not going to focus towards kids. You're going to focus. You want everybody in there. All right. That's the way studios work. When you're making a kids cartoon, even though people try to claim X-Men was not soft and cuddly compared to what I was reading, it was. But even then, the demographic is the scope is limited because there's things you can't do in a cartoon that you can do in a movie. You see what PG-13 allows you to get away with. So they're looking for a much wider appeal. I highly doubt, they may say that, I highly doubt that they're going to use a cartoon, a limited scope cartoon with a limited demographic to determine whether they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a movie. All right. I mean, that just flies in the face of math itself.
Yeah, this was. I remember seeing this the first time, and I was like 13 when this movie came out and I first saw it. I was actually living in Europe when I saw it theatrically, and yeah, the whole Holocaust opening was. I mean, you never saw like a superhero movie open with like just like this kind of like we're just throwing down the gauntlet on. Just
people don't even like to discuss the Holocaust in general conversations, let alone put it in a movie.
Yeah, and I mean, can you blame them?
Yeah. SOM, no, you're agreeing with me. Or unless you're saying Williams Fly. Because I am saying shows are not as popular as movies. That's what I'm saying. I think he's saying
we know who Williams Fly is.
Yes, of course. Yeah, the cat's out of the bag, or the fly is out of the the hive or whatever.
William, when they debut the X-Men in the MCU, do you think Kevin Feige is going to do a callback to the original X-Men with Cerebro, beginning with Charles Xavier? I don't know. I'm going to think he's going to want to make this version of the X-Men, even though he was involved in this one. I think he's going to want to make this one his and leave his imprint on it in the company that he's currently running, which in my opinion means I think he's going to start with the original 5.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, and you'll definitely see Cerebro. I think he's asking, will you see like the Cerebro, introduction as part of the credits? It's like, yeah, I think probably he'll kind of say like, yeah, that was kind of like the Fox X-Men's thing. We're gonna kind of try something different.
Yeah, I think he's going to go the extra mile to make this version of X-Men different. Because when this is the only thing I didn't like about this movie is it jumps right into a lineup of the X-Men that it took time and real estate to get to.
Yeah, well,
when you see this version of X-Men, most of these X-Men didn't debut until 1975, but there's a journey there from their first encounter with Magneto and how they go from being teens and then other priorities and things like that and type of enemies and what they're fighting. There's an evolution that leads up to what made the other versions of the X-Men acceptable. Here, they just jump into characters that wouldn't be X-Men for like decades, 15 years or so.
Yeah, to kind of go into a little bit of the production history of X-Men, there were a lot of mutants who were considered for this movie who actually like Beast was I'll go and pull this up from the Wikipedia. There's concept art of Beast, and he for this movie, and we of course we didn't see him until Last Stand. But they want to have Beast. They wanted to have I think Nightcrawler, Archangel. Yeah, this is the concept art for Beast. Let me go back to the Wikipedia page. This is kind of like the idea of like Beast is going to look like, and as we see like other mutants who were considered characters like Juggernaut, Blob, the Sentinels were on there at one point, Nightcrawler. So yeah, there's a Jubilee. There was just
Yeah,
that's kind of like
Jubilee literally is not an X-Men until 30 years.
she gets so screwed in this franchise.
Yeah,
Because she's like she's in the background of like this movie and one other, like, but that's about it.
Well, an Iceman. I mean, so I think he's going to go the route of with a Fantastic Four type situation, to where you see the founding of the concept, so that he can develop the concept. Now, does that mean that there won't be other mutants, other recognizable mutants in these stories going forward? Oh no, I think you're going to see plenty of mutants, but the actual X-Men proper, because you can have a Wolverine story without him being part of the X-Men for years. You can have a solo franchise if you wanted to before you have him, join the X-Men. There's a lot of things, but I think what ends up happening is they take the most popular characters of the day, and we can't do an X-Men movie without Wolverine. Well, they told X-Men stories about Wolverine from 1963 to 1975.
Well, and they eventually did, he has the cameo in First Class, so that's about the closest they've done. He's also he's in he's at the cameo in First Class. He's got you got the Weapon X part in Apocalypse. So those are ones that have a lesser Wolverine presence. So that's about the closest they've come in the proper franchise. Oh no, he's not in Dark Phoenix, but I don't know if that's the best example to go with.
That's a good thing. Joga, yeah. I agree with this, but that doesn't change the fact that the audience for live action is massive compared to what you're in the return. The financial return is indescribably bigger than what you get. That's why, if you don't have animation embedded into your current, culture, you're going to end up losing money on it, and you're going to end up canceling projects or not doing projects or not doing them very well. Warner Brothers. So I agree. There's a lot you can do with animation. You can do all kinds of stuff, but like I said, it's the audience, it's the diminishing return versus a movie. It's just this is the money.
We are the future, Charles, not them. They no longer matter.
Okay, I can't deal with your impressions today.
That was a very good one. I could do a very good Magneto, man.
Bruce Davison was Willard, the Rat. It's amazing how people came out 3 before Stephen King wrote his first novel, and Carrie, you have an outcast as being bullied. Yep.
By the way,
because Stephen King was an outcast that got bullied too.
By the way, you may remember this, William. Bruce Davison. He would go on to be Dr. Silverman on Terminator: Sarah Connor Chronicles about 9 years after this. Because he dies. Senator Kelly dies in this movie. I am not getting precious over spoilers from a quarter century ago, guys. But he dies, but I don't know. It's like because he is definitely like an X-Men / mutant nemesis in the comics. So I would have I would have liked to have seen him come back or some form. I mean maybe it'll be like in the MCU X-Men.
Well, Henry Gyrich was more of a threat than him. William, honestly, you could be right, Anthony. I don't think he will, and nor do I think he should, because by doing so, you skip the evolution and the relationship that Professor X has with those characters. And this was one of my few problems with this franchise we're watching now. It just jumps to the hotshot characters. Who are the top 10 most popular characters? Let's do them. That has nothing to do with whether they make the best story. Or with Gene and Scott and Hank and Warren, all those guys went through as they grew as characters. That's what made X Factor so popular when it came out in the mid 80s, is because it was a relationship, the original relationships of those 5 individuals that grew into what you were able to see. And then you had the intermingling, because then you would have original X-Men that would come back and be part of the crew. Cyclops came back and had a long run. And then you had Storm evolve into a leader, and you really can't have that kind of evolution if you're just going with the most popular characters, so you can, Kevin Feige can do whatever he wants, and he's probably going to be good at it. Yeah. I just don't think he's going to do that, because that's what he did before with Fox, and there's no reason. You have time to tell this story. You don't have to impress anybody. Marvel's already impressed people.
Now, of course, we just saw the introduction of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine in the cage fight there. I'm going to read a little bit from Wikipedia here, kind of talking about it, because obviously this is, was Hugh Jackman's big break, and but he almost wasn't Wolverine in this movie. So to kind of This is from the casting section on the X-Men Wikipedia. Glenn Danzig was invited to Fox to audition for the role of Wolverine in 1995. As his height and build closely resembled that of the film's protagonist, Wolverine, as we see in one joke, a Deadpool Wolverine is only about 5 feet 3 inches in the comics. However, he declined due to scheduling conflicts with his band. With Singer taking over as director, Russell Crowe was the first choice to play Wolverine, but he turned it down.
By the way, what Brad is saying here, anybody who says Blade was the precursor to anything, they were starting development. Look at the year they started development for X-Men.
In 95. Well, they were trying to get X-Men like in the 80s. I mean,
yeah, they just, like I said, they came close in 91, but the Marvel wanted too much. Yeah. At that time, in 1991, Marvel was selling a shitload of comics. And then the fluff era began where we overprinted and everything, and everybody started taking a hit. And then we started doing some stupid shit, and then they had to sell them off. Hank is not the same age as Magneto or Charles in the comics when they first meet. Hank is the same age as the rest of them. He's not. They're kids. When you first see the X-Men, they are teenagers, Hank included. They are all, not only are they teenagers, they're the exact same age. They're the exact same age.
This is such an unforgettable moment for me when I first saw it, when he pops his claws. This is the first time Wolverine pops his claws in the X-Men movies, and this was just like, this was so unforgettable, seeing his claws in live action for the first time. And he slices the shotgun in two. So yeah, this was a hell of a moment, like seeing a Wolverine again, show what he's got under those hands for the first time. So to go back to,
but personally, hold on. The only reason why Wolverine is in this movie is because they had to sell the movie. See, MCU doesn't have to do the X-Men of 2000. It was a risky concept. It was a bold concept, and they had to sell the movie, so they put the hotshot characters in there.
And by the way, to add to that, what is it? What does everybody think the budget for this movie was? You just take a guess. What was the budget for the first X-Men? To kind of like talk about like the risk at the time and selling at the time. Yeah. It had a budget of $75 million,
which was a lot.
Back then it was a lot, but I mean these days you talk about making a superhero movie.
That's an A24 feature.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, you're if you're making a DC or Marvel movie now, I mean you're lucky to bring it in under like 140 budget wise.
And like I said, this movie doesn't age well. But here's one of the things is like with the difference between why I think he might go a different route in the modern era is because he doesn't have to sell the X-Men. He doesn't have to sell an entire franchise. The MCU has done that for him. He has the ability and the time to tell the story he wants to tell if he doesn't want to have to deal with the hotshot characters. Like this is so all the Marvel salad in there. Oh, Wolverine's so popular, we got to have him. We got to have Storm. You don't necessarily have to have them as X-Men right off the bat because you're already running on a multi-billion-dollar machine. Whereas in 2000, no, we weren't in the same situation. And basing it off a modern retelling of the X-Men, no. Charles Xavier is in his mid to late 30s when you first see him. He's bald because of his power, but he's not young. Hank is a kid. Hank is a genius level kid, and he's further along in his education because he's got an IQ that's at an atmosphere because he gets his doctorate and everything else. He goes to med school. He goes to all that. He becomes a doctor before he joins. He does it in short order, but he's still young. He's still considerably younger than Professor X. They're all the same age. The only one that's a little bit younger is Bobby. He's described as being a year younger than them, but they're teenagers.
Are you not sure it's teenagers with attitude?
Well, like I said, we don't have to. I would rather not see Wolverine with the X-Men for a while. I don't mind seeing him. Like I think you'll see a new Wolverine. Be honest with you, I'm gonna make a bet you see him in the new movies as Hugh Jackman's character gets killed off for good this time. Same thing with all these other predecessor characters. I think you may see the old versions get killed off as the new ones are introduced, and then you will see them throughout the next 6 or 7 years. God, it's too loud. And Rogue's journey. You're muted, Brad.
Shit, how? Well,
You've
my
been
mouth
muted.
is moving.
It looks like you've been muted for a little bit. I just saw your lips moving just now.
Oh shit, man.
can
What
start over.
was I saying a second ago?
I don't know. I could hear it.
Well, I'll just go back to like, well, first of all, you're talking about like with Wolverine, whether or not he's affiliated with the X-Men in the MCU, like off the bat. You know, they could if they wanted to. If they wanted to kind of flip it, they could actually introduce him MCU wise as an Avenger first, because he is.
I wouldn't do that at all. And that was stupid, by the way. And him and Spider-Man, as Avengers, was like, that was after Secret Invasion. That was when they started throwing Spider-Man in the Avengers. If you're doing Wolverine should be solo, period, until he joins the X-Men, because that's part of the complex that Wolverine had to get over when Professor X recruited him in Giant Size X-Men #1. The biggest problem he had is he didn't want to be part of a team. He didn't want to be part of a family because he had lost so much before. He didn't want to have people relying on him and his impulsiveness, and he didn't want to feel guilty. He just wasn't that guy. And the relationship with how he grew over the decades to not only trust other people, trust other leadership, but literally be willing to die for these people. And literally, these are his family. They're the only real family that he had. Putting them in these other groups, that's dumb. Making them Avengers, I don't think they should have ever done that. And making him he is an X-Man. He has a couple of appearances. He has one appearances. The next time you see Wolverine after Hulk 181, 182 is as an X-Man.
By the way, this first encounter with because now we're at the first Wolverine Sabretooth encounter. One thing that I think this movie does very well, and particularly does with Wolverine. I mean, because he gets thrown from the camper, and then he walks back over, and we just get like such a sense of like the scope of his power. We've already seen the claws, but he walks back over to Rogue. The cut on his head heals. He sniffs the air, and so that tells you he's got the heightened kind of animal senses, and we've seen the claws. So this does a really good job. This movie really does a good job of like just kind of giving you, it gives you like very kind of these very Cliff Notes sort of intros to a lot of the X-Men powers. But we kind of see that a little bit with Cyclops later on at the train station when Toad takes his visor off, and you see his his optic blast just going uncontrollably, and so for anybody who wasn't familiar with Cyclops at that point, that gives you the context just in seconds. This is why he has to wear that visor. So that's something X-Men does. The original X-Men does very well, I think, is it really gets you up to speed very quickly on everybody who's got what powers, how they work, what the kind of the benefits, the drawbacks are, and again, for this being like the first like team movie, it really kind of had to do that. It had to kind of hit the ground running and kind of compartmentalize a lot of things. So that's one aspect of X-Men that I think is really stood the test of time. And
I would love to see them do a better the next time around. I would love to see them do a better job as far as they did what they could 25 years ago, but Rogue's development into the as she joins the X-Men is special and unique to her character. Her relationship with Carol Danvers, how that goes down. We have a Carol Danvers in this universe. We'll probably have one in the consolidated universe as well. So I'd love to see that play out because her emotional state is not represented here. She's Rogue in name only here, but like I said, this movie's great. They did what they needed to do.
I think she's kind of like almost like a stand-in for Jubilee in a lot of ways.
Who shouldn't even be part of the story.
It really in a lot of ways it's like she in the story this movie tells, she kind of fills the role that Jubilee normally fills.
Yeah, which neither one of them, be honest with you, neither one of them should be part of a beginning story in this era. What they did in 2000, that's fine. I'm not complaining about that. But in the modern era, with the characters you have to work with and ones that are pre-existing in Rogue's origin, I would love to see them actually take all the steps needed to make to flesh that character out. before she becomes an X-Men, and her journey to become an X-Men. Because remember, when she joined the X-Men, they hated her. And they all didn't want her part of the team. But Charles Xavier said, what are we here for if not to help mutants? This is a mutant in need. She can benefit from the structure that you guys have all benefited from, just as much as you guys did. And she took her in, and it took years, especially when Dazzler joined the team, because she'd been sent to hunt down Dazzler, so they got off to a bad start. And how their relationship grows to where they're like ride or die during the Mark Silvestri era. And see, that's what the one thing about
sorry to interject, but I just got to, as so many people have pointed out, like Hugh Jackman right here, he's in really good shape here. But this is like realistic, like good shape, like a person can get into. And then you see him in and by the time of like the Wolverine, I mean, he's got the body of a Greek god.
He's 30 here.
Yeah, he's talked about too with the way he would get that just incredibly shredded look was he did this thing called the dehydration diet, which is, I think what it is, it's the way it works is like when they have a shirtless scene coming up, it's like a week beforehand. He just takes in as much water as he can, and then a day before they film that scene, he goes on a total fast. So no eating, no drinking, water included. And and he's talked about. He says like he's the first time he did that, he got like halfway into that and thought, this has got to be the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life.
Now, going back to what I was saying with them, though, I think the most important thing that Kevin Feige has the time to do now is evolve these characters to the point where you care about them besides just seeing them all at once. There's Storm, there's Cyclops, there's this. There are things, and that's what made the comic great. Now, I know you can't do that in the movies all the time because movies are movies, but because you have the luxury of the MCU, Rogue's character should have a lot more meat on the bone than she ever did in this series.
And yeah, actually, I think probably the only the Rogue cut of Days of Future Past, that's because she was omitted from the theatrical version completely. So that's actually one of probably the biggest kind of recompense that the series makes for like how for everything you're talking about as far as the Rogue character, because she has a rather pivotal role in the Rogue cut.
Yeah, and like I said, all these characters, like there's just so much more to them than they ever got a chance to. But like I said, I can't look at this 2000 movie through 2025. I just know now that you have an entire infrastructure that they were a part of building. I want to see a little bit more than just, hey, who's your top 10 X-Men, and just throw them in there as ranking. That doesn't help the story.
Here's the first appearance of Kitty Pryde right there going through the door.
How are you guys watching this?
Disney Plus, man. Hey sis, how's it going? Hey Aaron.
Stop saying sis. That's creepy. You're making my show creepy, Brad.
So mowing lawns, Aaron? Is it? But you mow your lawn or the neighbor's lawn? And by the way, Aaron, I shared something. I tagged you, and please give me your feedback because I think you will definitely agree with the thesis of this particular feature. I just shared that I tagged your name in on Twitter. So. Yeah, so Cyclops, of course, intro to Cyclops, and yeah, I was mentioning earlier, if there's one character in the whole X-Men franchise that pretty much everybody pretty much universally agrees, he really got screwed by the series long term. It definitely has to be Cyclops. And you mentioned Iceman earlier, and the joke I kind of tell is like you watch the X-Men over the course of the X-Men movies, you notice how Cyclops is in them less and less. At the same time, Iceman is in them more and more. Which
it's because they told their story based on the popularity of characters at the time and not a natural evolution of the characters. That's why Cyclops is limited, because if you follow the natural progression of the characters, Cyclops evolves into a very strong leader. His leadership capabilities are showcased more and more when you're just putting the characters out there, because I got to have Storm, I got to have Wolverine, I got to have Rogue, I got to have all the contemporary popular characters. You just put them in there, and that's not how any of those characters progress. You never get to see Cyclops the way Cyclops was designed to be. Once again, that's a criticism of this movie that really I did not make in 2000. I was just happy to see them do it. But that is one of the things that I think that certain characters were hurt by the fact that how they were brought along. When you're
Well,
writing
it's
these
not.
characters on a different format, you're writing them by design. When you're making a movie, I need an audience. That's
Well,
what you're
it's
doing.
not. It's not even like so. You talk about Cyclops. It's not even so much a criticism of like any one movie. It's just like kind of like, just like how the franchise collectively sort of.
Well, yeah, no, even the whole franchise. The whole franchise. If you're doing the franchise today, by the time you got to a third or fourth movie, you would establish who your leaders are, and you would have given them weight. Like when you see Captain America is established as a leader from the get-go, and he evolves through every time that you see him wherever he is at, because the natural progression of Captain America is the natural progression of the Avengers. They did it in the order, the way that everybody joined the team and were there. With X-Men, they took 30 years. By the time this movie came out in 2000, X-Men has been around since 1963. They basically took the last 5 or 8 years of X-Men and said, okay, we're going to use these characters because, they're the ones that are selling the comics right now, which would have been fine. But the problem is you sacrifice the character evolution of certain important characters to do that. Once again, you did what you needed to do to get this movie out, so I'm on board with it. But now that the standards are different and the storytelling apparatus is different, I would rather see them do it a different way.
By the way, this thing right here that Iceman makes, it's this little ice. I guess it's supposed to be a rose, but I couldn't tell what that was back when he just puts his hand on the table and then this little ice sculpture comes out and it's supposed to be a flower, but it just doesn't register. So it is what it is. But I always got a little bit of a laugh at that. It's like, oh, you just gave her an ice rose that's gonna melt in 5 minutes anyway.
Is this the one about the cure?
No, that's X-Men: The Last Stand.
Yeah, this is the very first X-Men movie they did back in 2000.
By the way,
I get them all mixed up. Sorry.
By the way, with those Xavier was just showing the X-Men uniforms there. There's a deleted scene that I think they should have kept this in the movie. It's right when they're preparing to fly to the Statue of Liberty to stop Magneto, and so Cyclops is already suited up, and Wolverine's right behind him, and Cyclops says, "Okay, we're gonna do this as a team. Are you gonna be able to play along and follow orders?" And Wolverine says, "Give me one." And Cyclops says, he beckons him over and says, "Put this on." And it's one of the X-Men uniforms. And Wolverine asks, whose is this? And Cyclops smirks and he goes, "It's one of mine." So I think they should have kept that in. That's a pretty good joke.
Costume wise, you see the evolution. You see the comfort zone that the MCU has created now. You couldn't
the cowl and
these look more like the Grant Morrison era costumes where they kind of minimize them. But even in that era, you could still recognize them as X-Men. They were not going to do the traditional X-Men costumes in this movie because the environment just wasn't there. We weren't where we are now as far as like being able to show a comic. There's a couple of characters that you could do that to. Spider-Man, Superman, Batman. Those are characters that are obviously, those characters that are literally ingrained into mankind's history. But when you look at some of the other characters that came along, like you could do a Fantastic Four. Obviously, they're going to be Fantastic Four. But when it came to X-Men, their costumes were exotic and weird, even beyond what the normal standards were. So that's why when you see the X-Men, you never see Wolverine with a cape. It wasn't until Deadpool and Wolverine when you see him put on. That's why that cowl scene got such a huge pop and was so huge because you just understood the evolution from 2000 to 2024.
Well, we knew it was coming too. I mean, like from the first set photos where he's in the comics accurate suit, he's still got the sleeves on there, but everybody knew it's like there's no way this movie's going to end without him having the cowl on. And
but like I said, I mean, you went.
Not everyone. I had no idea he was going to do it, Brad.
Okay, only
listen, the majority of people are not on the internet the way we are. They are on the internet, but they're not on the internet the way we are. They're not looking at set pictures. They're not looking at any. And you know what? I envy those people sometimes.
I get most of my news of movies and stuff from your guys' hyper
approach to it.
Sensitivity to it because you guys look every aspect, read everything. I just go to the movies and just watch the story and go, okay, it came out.
Yeah, most people don't look at set pictures. And that's what makes us fanatics. But most people don't look at set pictures. Most people don't get any news from the movie until they see trailers, even if they're on the internet for other things. It's just weird. So, and like I said, I envy those people sometimes, because sometimes I think we look too far into it to the point where we lose the joy of just, wow, that was cool that just happened. Same thing with wrestling. It's just like, sometimes I give kudos to the people who can surprise us in this day and era when we're literally looking at everything with a microscope.
It's like you guys bag Love and Thunder for some performances. I look at the whole thing and like, oh, that was a good story.
Oh, I look
It
at
was
the whole
all
thing
about
and
the
see that movie.
choices we made.
I hate that movie, but everybody's
I
different.
know.
That movie made a ton of money. I think that movie is smoldering garbage, but you know what? It made almost 800 million, so somebody loved it.
It was all about choices and the choices you make. That's what I got from the movie. Not, oh, what a horrible actor the one guy was from whatever.
What, Chris Hemsworth? Yeah, well, like I said, I just thought the story was
No,
weak.
not Chris Hemsworth's the one that everyone criticizes. Him and Hugh Jackman had some kind of feud or something like that, or he's Australian.
Could tell you
In Gladiator.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Well,
Everyone focused on how bad Russell Crowe. I didn't care. It just furthered the story. It showed him as a quivering, all the gods being quivering assholes.
Yeah, I could have done without the gold tutu though. That really.
Yeah, you're focusing on the details and not the story.
Well, yeah. The movie's only terrible if you pick it apart, piece by piece. Yes, I get it.
I think that movie's terrible from every angle. But hey, that's, like I said, all film is subjective. I actually like the black costumes. It suited. Oh yeah, 100%. That's what 100%. They did what they needed to do. When I criticize this movie, I don't hate it. I love this movie, but they did what they needed to do to get this movie made. If they would have came in with the costumes of the day and would have came in with the original 5 xmen and and sold that, I think I don't think they would have gotten the financing for the movie. So now it's a different era because they're fine and they can do Wolverine and have Wolverine look exactly like they want him to look. I'm pretty sure, and they even said it, that if they had the creative licenses back in 2000, they would have been more recognizable. But at the same time, the investors and the non-comic book people, the people who are putting the money on this, and then the general audience, they were worried about that. And as they were proven to be successful, then you started to see even the Sentinels. Days of Future Past, I absolutely hate the design of the Sentinels in that movie. And you're further along enough.
You don't like the Sentinels in Days of Future Past?
Those Sentinels look like shit.
Wait, no, wait. Are you talking about the ones in the 74 period or the ones in the future timeline?
Both of them, because I'm going to pull them up.
Man, the Sentinels. I dug the shit out of the Sentinels in Days of Future Past.
They look like fucking
like giant robots.
No, not. They're all giant robots. But hold on, let me fill this. Fuck.
And by the way, we're for those of you watching at home, we are right now at Magneto doing the first test on Senator Kelly with the mutation machine that gives off the white web-looking radiation. So this is kind of an interesting design for like how you like visibly show radiation. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry for my taste. That looks like shit, but you know what? Hey,
this is how you visibly show radiation. Do I taste metal?
Yeah, well, somebody who does dig the Sentinels is my baby sis down there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna start muting you.
The best thing about the Sentinels I liked, at least in the newer ones, is you could see who they killed in the past.
Yeah, that's true. The most we got before this was like the one Sentinel head in the danger room in Last Stand.
It's like you see where they get from. Sorry, I'm really worn out from things that have happened the past week. You see things, you see the fire come out, you see the ice
It's all
come
right.
out, you see their armor come out. That's, oh, they killed that guy. Oh, they killed that guy.
Yeah, I hope they improve. Well, it's not going to be hard to improve on this design I have pulled up. You could probably give it to anybody and do better than this. But
I mean,
I'm
it's pretty.
reading this.
Oh yeah, Aaron's reading my awesome Cobra Kai article right now.
wow.
We're at Cliff Notes. Zara Malik should get a spinoff, guys. And anybody
Thanks for keeping it on topic, guys.
Anybody at Netflix watching right now, if you guys are not having active discussions about a Zara Malik spinoff, you are not doing your job. Sorry.
For those of you who are watching X-Men and don't really know who the fuck is that he just mentioned, I'm sorry.
I know what you're talking about, Brad.
For the general audience, the people who are trying to get onto the channel, that was for you.
Thank you, Teladia.
Yes. Sorry, votes 3-1, William.
It's not a vote of us. It's the audience. I hope we have more than us on this screen watching this damn show.
A mouse spin? No. Zara Malik, the character in Cobra Kai season 6. I had an article up on Comic Book about. I think she should be up for a spinoff. I actually had like 6 go live today. And actually, William.
I was not afraid of any version of
this article on Kung Fu Kingdom.
Oh yeah, well, I got a few different I'm always like I got all kinds of. When it comes to
guys, I can't stay very long. I'm just way sick still.
All right, we'll get better, man.
Later.
See you, man.
Get well.
It's
like fight for your love.
Yeah, and Aaron. Where you to your point a minute ago, when it comes to, like, what I do, it's, I've always got, like, a bunch of different irons in the fire, like, writing wise. So I mean, I've got, like, like a whole bunch, like, right. What I did for combo this week, it's like, okay, this is combo, this is KFK, this is Fortress, and there's I mean, within the next year, I'd like to really kind of again branch it out even more with, like, even if it's not like like one of my main, like, outlets, if there's something I can get contributor wise on this place or that place, I definitely would love to do that. But no, I've definitely and again, it's like it's weird kind of addressing this, because I mean, there is also an element of I can't talk about a lot of things pre-publication, so but
so with like Kung Fu Kingdom, do you prefer to do articles or like on smaller films and try and give more light to it?
No.
More mainstream stuff, you go to more like comicbook.com or anything like that?
No, I run the whole gamut on like big and small for like with every outlet. So it's whether it's with KFK, I probably do shine. There is probably the place I kind of shine the most spotlight on, kind of like the lower budget or straight to streaming or what have you kind of stuff. But again, it's like if I got a good angle, my editors say, yeah, go for it. It's like it'll whatever outlet I'm pitching it to at the time. It's like, yeah, I'll get it going there. But yeah, it's like I
know that you did an interview with Bruce Lee's daughter on Kung Fu Kingdom, which was pretty big for Kung Fu Kingdom to have somebody like her be on there.
I actually interviewed Martin Cove too a while back, but it was about like 4 years before Cobra Kai started. I interviewed on Martin Cove, so that was probably like right when like the pitches for Cobra Kai as a concept were first getting rolling. But to answer your question, I've written about Cobra Kai on KFK before, and again, it's like
you interviewed the one that plays Kenny.
Yeah, I did that for Screen Rant. That was Dallas Dupre.
Screen Rant. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting them blurred out.
Yeah, I've been around the block enough as far as like different outlets too. So it's like even sometimes I have to like kind of like jog memory. Like, did I do this one for them or them or them?
All right. Yeah, Iceman's death was bullshit. But his entire presence in this series was kind of compromised.
Are you talking about? Are you talking about in when he gets melted by the one Sentinel?
Yeah,
In Days of Future Past. I mean, it's irrelevant because the timeline gets.
The future never happened. It's just like when Wolverine is fried in Days of Future Past. You know, obviously Wolverine makes it out. He does all right.
Yeah, but Aaron, again, there's I when it comes to anything I'm writing, it's like, or for where I'm writing it for, again, there's also a lot where I can't talk about necessarily what's coming up before it comes up. So all I can say is just keep your eyes peeled on, and when I share things too when they publish. So I'll just kind of leave it.
And
at that.
she's a real life martial.
Yeah. Reina Vallandigham. Yeah.
That's too.
Yeah.
She's really, she's like really quick.
Yeah, and she actually now that William, this relates to this.
You had to take a really long, distracting road to get there, but sure.
She actually, I saw an interview she gave recently where she talked about like what, like post Cobra Kai, what she wanted to do, and she said, yeah, she's a big Marvel fan, and so she said, oh yeah, I'd love to like get become involved with the MCU at some point. So hopefully she gets that opportunity. I always hated this poor kid pick on.
Maybe she can play Rogue.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause put on that Southern accent and the like white lock of hair and have her like Rogue who can like do spinning kicks. Like, yeah, come on. Writes itself. By the way, we're about to right here. This is one of the first Stan Lee cameos that he's the hot dog vendor here.
He's right there in a blue shirt.
Yeah. I think. What was that, Aaron?
What? You should be like 50 minutes something into it.
Yeah, right now we're at 44:18.
44:26.
Yeah, we're right at when
cool.
Mystique is disguised as Bobby, and they're talking to Rogue on the bench about what happened, the whole incident with Wolverine. But going back to Stan Lee, I think William, I think this was like only like the second Stan Lee cameo. Like the only one he had done previously, I think, was in Trial of the Incredible Hulk, where he's like one of the jurors in Trial of the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, and he was Willie Lumpkin in one of the other things. But yeah, this was he wasn't doing cameos like he would become legendary for.
Yeah, well, because you give it like 3 years from when this movie comes out, then it was I think it was about 2003. That's when they started having fun with the Stan Lee cameos, where it's like
Fantastic Four really picked it up.
Well, I mean, William, much to your chagrin, Daredevil has a pretty good. It's the part where Matt, as a child, he blocks Stan Lee from walking out the traffic with the bus coming.
He's a guy that he saved. Yeah, I wish that movie had more watchable moments like that in it. But hey.
And then 2003 Hulk actually also that one's a really good one because that has the Stan Lee cameo and the Lou Ferrigno cameo at the same time because they're the two guys coming out of the lab talking about security. And again, it was about 2003. That was the point where they really started. It wasn't just like it wasn't like a Where's Waldo, like can you spot Stan Lee? It was a point where it's like, okay, this became a staple of any kind of like Marvel Comics production, and they went out of their way by that point. It's like, okay, he's gonna have dialogue. We're gonna do stuff that's memorable with it. It's not just gonna be like, oh, he's like quickly, like the first couple Spider-Man movies where he just pulls somebody out of the path of falling debris. It was about 2003. That's where they really started to make the Stan Lee cameos into, again, everybody went to the theater like anticipating where's he going to show up, what's the gimmick going to be, and they just got crazier and crazier as they went along. It's actually probably reminiscing on that part, as quick as it goes by in this movie. I don't know, maybe I kind of put to everybody tonight, like what's your personal favorite Stan Lee cameo?
Believe it or not, it's the one after he had passed away. The one
yeah.
Well, that was
it could, because he had just passed away I think like a month
you
and a half
that
prior.
Was going to be the last one that he had.
Not just that, but also again the nature of it, kind of like the exchange that he has with Miles actually kind of makes it hit harder because it's a little bit more like philosophical about life. So that just made it more impactful. Trying to think like what are some of my favorites that he did. I always really dug the Amazing Spider-Man cameo where when Spider-Man and Lizard are fighting in the library and he's the guy with the headphones on, he doesn't even see them behind him.
Very good article, Brad.
Yeah, thank you, sis. Yeah. So now Netflix, get on that Zorro spinoff, damn it. But anyway, what was I on? Yeah, so going back to kind of the Stan Lee cameos. Yeah, the Amazing Spider-Man I thought was, but also Spider-Man 3. That was one too. When he when Peter's looking at the sign saying Spider-Man's gained the key to the city and walks. I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
Yeah.
It was when they started giving him dialogue. That's where it started. Like, that's where you could tell it kind of became like the modern, like it was like the equivalent of like the Alfred Hitchcock cameos. But again, they got even more elaborate because again, Stan Lee became a character and throughout these movies. He became he just became like the through line through like anything Marvel related. And it's kind of weird because X-Men, the X-Men movies, his cameos are actually very sporadic in the X-Men movies. He's got the cameo in this one. He has at the beginning of Last Stand. It's when I think Chris Claremont's in the same scene. It's at the beginning when Jean Grey's when Xavier and Magneto go to Jean Grey's house and they're she's kind of showing a little bit of her levitation powers, and he's the guy with the hose. So there was that, and actually, I think that was again for whatever reasons, like he only made like 2, maybe 3 cameos throughout the whole X-Men franchise, which was a little bit weird. Talati, what are your thoughts? What's your favorite Stan Lee cameo?
It has to be Spider-Man 3.
Yeah. Again, I always dug that cameo a lot. I've also, I wasn't. Of course, this came out the same year. I wasn't a big fan of Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, but that had a pretty funny cameo where he's when Reed and Sue's wedding's supposed to happen. I guess we'll have to step away for a second. And he's like, I'm on the list. I'm Stan Lee. Look on the list. So that was pretty good.
Oh yeah, that was my favorite one.
Yeah, well,
That was my
because
favorite
now he's using his name too. So, William, I see like half of you right now. I think actually probably like and maybe this might be by design, but because Stan Lee was William, I'm gonna mute you. William's like some kind of noise going on right there. I'm gonna mute him until gets that sorted. Yeah, so this might have been by design, I think, because he's just so associated with Spider-Man. It's kind of Spider-Man is kind of like the Stan Lee what Mickey Mouse was to Walt Disney. And I think probably the Spider-Man cameos he did, those were the ones where you could tell he was probably having the most fun with those. Those are when they gave him dialogue. They just did all kinds of stuff that really you could just tell that
because Spider-Man was his baby with Jack Kirby.
Yeah, exactly. So you could tell that he was it felt like they were just kind of having the most fun riffing with those whenever in the Spider-Man cameos. Like Homecoming has a really good one when he accidentally webs up a guy who he thinks he's stealing his own car, and Stan Lee's the dude up in the second floor. Don't make me come down there, you punk. So yeah, there's I think that you could see a pretty good through line of the throughout the Spider-Man movies of his cameos, and you know what? Two things too. Also, I've always kind of said with the Stan Lee cameos, like after he passed away, one was that in Shang-Chi, in Shang-Chi Legend of the Ten Rings, I remember saying this to people at the time, but it's right after like the big bus fight scene, and when the bus kind of stops against that garbage truck, and Aquafina goes out and says, "Yeah, we're all okay." I remember saying at the time, the guy driving the garbage truck, I am dead certain that would have been the Stan Lee cameo. I have zero doubt that would have been the Stan Lee cameo. And then again, kind of also bringing it back to Spider-Man, another thing that just kind of makes adds a little bit of sadness to it. It's like, I mean, just how crazy would the cameo have been in No Way Home, in Spider-Man No Way Home? Because he's got 3 Spider-Man in this.
Yeah, that's pretty heartbreaking to think about.
That's the only thing probably, like, as far as like, because again, they've got all 3 of them in it. They got the villains all coming back in it. You just know they would have cooked up like a cameo that just would have been like, just so unforgettable.
They should try and get his daughter to do with the cameos for him.
His wife, actually, if you weren't aware, she was the voice of Madam Web on Spider-Man the Animated Series.
Oh.
Before she passed away, she was the voice of Madam Web.
I bet Stanley enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Excelsior.
Yeah. Oh, Aaron, did you ever see? This was in 06 and 07. Did you ever see this one show? It's called Who Wants to Be a Superhero, that Stanley hosted. Oh, you remember that?
I love that. Yes. Oh my God.
Yes. William, stop denying art.
I love the donut superhero.
Yeah.
Did you remember that one?
Oh, Fat Mama.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Feedback.
I remember it was yesterday watching that show.
Yeah, I
it was
followed
so
that
awesome.
so closely.
And the winner got to have their own
got to have a comic book.
And everything.
Yes, and of course Stanley was hosting it, and yeah, it was I don't think they ever like gave a reason for why it ended, because it ran for 2 seasons, and then they did a British version of it that was mainly with kids, so it kind of continued, but it was continuing over in the UK. But I was really into that when that was going, and I mean, again, obviously that was Stan Lee kind of like probably at the peak of like his
wasn't that on over there on Spike?
No, over here it aired on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Okay, well it was on the Sci-Fi Channel here. I didn't know whether it was on Spike over there.
Yes. So Aaron remembers that show well, and again, we both remember that show like it's yesterday, and William's still gonna like say it's like, oh come on, William, we don't need a DNA test.
This was like early days of the friggin' like internet of people like bickering and shit. People are like whinging and whining about the donut superhero, and I thought, why? It's a funny one. It's quirky. And they kept trying to say, oh, it's unhealthy and stuff. Like, hello, Sesame Street has a bloody Cookie Monster.
Yeah, so I was really, I was really enamored with Who Wants to Be a Superhero. Yeah, so I was wondering if anybody remember that as fondly as I did. Yeah, and of course, I mean, yeah.
The old online forums, so people.
Yeah. Okay, this is pretty. This is a really memorable part of too, with the guns floating in front of the cops and
reloading.
Yeah. Well, and then especially the one guy who like gets the bullet like just like stopped like right at his forehead.
Well, in they're no different to like the Gestapo and stuff like that he faced. The coppers.
Yeah. Now I do remember here. I have seen people like the Nostalgia Critic actually kind of point out a bit of a plot hole here with because again, like Xavier can't read Magneto's mind, but that's why he takes over the mind of a Sabretooth and Toad, and people have said, okay. You take over Sabretooth's mind, use Sabretooth to take off his helmet, and then get inside of Magneto's head. It's like, okay, I guess that's a pretty valid point. Yeah, this coming right here with the bullet just stopping like right when it hits the guy's forehead. That was really well handled here. Now that bullet does look a little bit wonky with the CGI nowadays, but nonetheless, this was really, again, it was a really tense supervillain moment for its time.
Don't forget this was probably like epics and that back then.
Yeah. Well, like Aaron, I mean, I mentioned before you came on, because this was, was much more of a, CVMs obviously were, they were much fewer and further between at the time, and X-Men was definitely much more of a risk back then. So this only had a budget of $75 million back in the, when it came out in 2000. Which again, it's like if you can get a a DC or Marvel movie like made these days for like less than 150, that's considered like coming in under budget. So.
And around the same time you had Blade.
Yeah, Blade. Well, Blade was. Let me look at what Blade's budget was. I think Blade costs kind of in that neighborhood too. Oh, Blade was 45. Blade was only 45 million. So again, it's like it shows you just how much times have changed.
Because Blade was the first big Marvel one that came out.
It was their first box office, and like, I just know William's going to come back on any second now and just start losing it with us about talking about Blade right now. But Blade was the first like Marvel Comics movie that was a box office because you only. Like, as far as like ones that got released theatrically during that time, and basically it was just Howard the Duck, which that infamously tanked, and then you had like everything else they had done that point as far as live action. They had like the Incredible Hulk TV series, they had the Spider-Man TV series, they had the Fantastic Four, Corman movie that went nowhere. They had the Captain America one that kind of again really it ended up going to video and like really didn't make much of an impact. So. Again, it just shows you how far they've come. So.
Oh yeah.
Wayne, we were talking a little bit about Blade while you're gone.
I haven't talked about Gunner.
I hope you didn't kill our audience.
Oh, Taladia, rim
No,
shot
we were
there,
just
man.
talking about box office and stuff like that, like numbers.
We're talking about like the again how much or how little for this time that they spent on CBMs and because Blade's budget, the first one was 45 and this movie was 75, and again it's like you just don't see CBMs like made for like less than 100 million, or usually more like 150 these days.
Well, the term comic book movie wasn't really starting to be used until after 2000 anyway, because there were none. There was Batman movies, there was Superman movies, there was Crow, there was other movies. Nobody knew they were comic book movies unless you had if you didn't have a bat. There's a lot of people that didn't know that was a comic book strip, and that movie bombed, by the way. Where are we at?
We're at timestamp. We're at one. We're exactly an hour in. We're right when Xavier is going into Senator Kelly's mind.
Fishman. Yeah, like I said, it's a different standard. Different standard. Because, like I said, after this movie, you started to see the budgets go in a direction where they would not come back from, because the expectation was there. Once you showed people you could do this, there was no going back. You can, the low budget comic book movies, just
Well, like like X2 to kind of give some context. That X2, the budget for that, it went from 75 by the first one to Wikipedia. It says 110 to 125. For X2, and then Last Stand, that jumped up even more. That went to 210, which that made it. I think that at the time that made one of the most expensive movies ever made. I mean, now these days we see, superhero movies. I mean, 200 million. That's pretty commonplace now.
Yeah, if you're spending less than 150, and it's a high end movie, then you run the risk of putting out a movie that doesn't meet the standards of the average audience goer.
Yeah, I mean,
did you know that? Well, did you know that the Phantom pretty much made Billy Zane's career?
Yeah. Well, because the Phantom didn't perform well, but it got him on the radar of James Cameron, which got him into Titanic. So it bombed. It's a leading role. The leading role. I mean, directors don't care about box office. They look at how you do in the movie. Well, I mean, it bombed because it was Not even, it wasn't even like a comic book movie. It was a comic strip movie. It was a
Comic strip, and it was
from like
old,
the
ancient.
from the 1930s. Like the people like alive today
I
is like
actually owned a few Gundam comic books.
He was in
Yeah,
Defenders
kid.
of the Earth too. Defenders of the Earth, a cartoon.
Yeah.
that nobody liked.
We I don't know whether it was it was the same over there, but you used to buy them at news agencies.
So William, because Senator Kelly's about to,
Evaporate.
kind of turn to water here. But I mean, you said Fishman earlier, and it's like I get, from what we kind of see, I'm guessing that's like what that radiation did to him. It seems like the effect it had, it was starting to turn him into like some kind of like aquatic mutant, but again, his body just wasn't able to adapt to the transition. So he again just completely.
Magneto's doing something that Apocalypse would have been the person to do, and that's re-engineer the mutations. Magneto did do it, but Apocalypse is the one that actually made it a threat.
Yeah.
I mean, he could take a shitty power and make you into a god.
That was actually a pretty good effect for the time too, when he just kind of just pops into that puddle of water there. Like for the time, it looks a little bit raw today, but it's,
if this was DC, he will be considered a metahuman.
Yeah, that's the term. Which they pretty much stick. I mean, you have the term mutants, but I mean, for like all like superpowered people, Marvel wise, they pretty much you stick with the term superhuman. The MCU, they kind of, because they didn't have X-Men at the time back when Age of Ultron came out, so that's when they started to see the term enhanced person. Because they had Quicksilver, and they couldn't. I was like, okay, he's an X-Men, so he's a mutant. So, but again, we can't legally use the term mutants, so we got to find some way around this. So, okay, we got enhanced people. Thank God Xavier fell down on that platform and didn't fall down that bottomless pit in Cerebro. This actually, this will probably break William's heart. Well, because I'd seen and actually might be the same for you, Aaron, because I'd seen here and there as a kid, like a few episodes of Star Trek on TV, but as far as with Patrick Stewart, this really was kind of my proper introduction to Patrick Stewart. It was X-Men.
It would have been a lot of people's. If people don't watch Star Trek or any of his other work.
Yeah, it's I just from channel surfing. I'd seen his face. I'd seen him associated with Star Trek, but again, it's I hadn't really taken the plunge Star Trek wise at the time. So that this really was my intro to again to him as Professor Xavier. And again, William, I keep making that offer. You want to do any Star Trek watch parties? It's again, we have multiple Trekkies in our little community here that definitely know a lot about this material more so than I do. But if you want to do those, man, I'm happy to take that ride.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
It's like oh shit moment, and he runs and goes, Gene.
What's that?
Oh, I was mentioning when you stepped away that again through channel surfing and stuff as a kid. It's I had seen Patrick Stewart, I'd seen him in snippets on Star Trek: Next Generation, so I knew, he was affiliated with Star Trek. But as far as seeing him in something in its entire seeing his entire performance of something, this really was my intro to Patrick Stewart as a kid, seeing him as Professor Xavier. Wow. And I said, yeah, and that's like I said, it's I knew that would break your heart, but
you were born the year that Star Trek: Next Generation premiered, so.
Again, I'd said it's if you want to at any point, you're doing Star Trek watch parties. I mean, I'm happy to take that plunge. And again, it's I've said, I think I've said on here before. I'm at a point in my life where it's I kind of enjoy people sharing other kind of nerd shit with me. That again, if it's not something I'm necessarily invested in, but it's again they have a lot of knowledge and passion for it. It's I do enjoy listening. So you want to do that with Star Trek? I'm here for that, man.
I was born the year they put the Wee Doctor I'll call it the Wee Doctor. The non crusher.
Yeah. Yeah, you were actually also born the year of Beetlejuice's debut.
Oh, nice.
By the way, also,
Mother and daughter. Woo!
Yeah. By the way,
Are they
also,
going to do mother and daughter things?
by the way, this that shot of the New York skyline we saw a minute ago, that does unfortunately date this movie a little bit with the Twin Towers still there.
Yeah. Oh, that if it was Spider-Man.
Yeah, that story.
Yeah.
That trailer was and that trailer is online, so you can see it. But they pulled it from theaters because but YouTube wasn't around at the time. But they pulled it from theaters because again what happened with the Twin Towers. And this is interesting because again mentioning the nostalgia critic again. I remember he talked about he did like I forget which Spider-Man video he talked about where he mentioned this theory, but he talked about like he thinks that scene where he webs up the the helicopter between the two Twin Towers, he thinks that moment, had that been kept in the movie, that would have been like the kind of like the reveal of Peter in the costume of Spider-Man, because he doesn't really have like any like dramatic reveal in the suit in the original Spider-Man, and he thinks that would have been it. It's like, I think you're onto something there. I think that probably I'm inclined to agree.
It actually they were cutting it real thin and putting it out in theaters because they had to do a lot of cutting and reshooting and stuff like that, and also they had to just get rid of a lot of their promotion, and that was going on. I think Dave has the one of the rare posters of with the Twin Towers in it.
Yeah, it's where it's like reflected in the lenses in one of his eyes.
Yeah, it's really rare to get those posters because they quickly removed them.
They had a similar thing kind of happen with Zoolander because that came out just a couple weeks after it. And yeah, what do you prefer, yellow spandex? Yeah. That's again, it's like the fact they address it directly in the movie. It's like, yeah, okay, it's like that took some guts, but it's one of the more memorable lines, definitely. It's probably
the thing is, they went with the ultimate X-Men type uniforms with this.
Well, I think William, correct me if I'm wrong, because the Ultimate Marvel that started.
He's not here.
Because I think that started after the first Spider-Man. I think it was
in 2002.
Yeah, so the suits in this movie.
They're based on the Grant Morrison.
Ultimate.
They're based on the Grant Morrison version of the X-Men that was popular during.
I didn't know that one. I thought it was.
Yeah, look up Astonishing X-Men. Look up the costumes from Astonishing X-Men. You'll see the resemblance.
Well, I just learned something new today.
That's always good. Well, everybody learned something new from me, which is that Zara Malik should get a spinoff. That goes without saying. Now with also with Tyler Mane as Sabretooth. Again, I don't know whether I still don't know whether I'm let down or like amused by what they do with him in Deadpool and Wolverine, where it's like they build up, he's back as Sabretooth, but again, he gets decapitated 5 seconds later. So I don't know whether to classify that as like a big letdown or like a big like that was a like a good joke in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Well, those are all throwaway characters that nobody. They're all in that void. They're all basically the
thing is, isn't Sabretooth Wolverine's biggest villain?
Yeah, they have a really a long-standing enmity. So yeah.
Thanks to Chris Claremont, but for that, by the way, because when he first appears in Iron Fist, he's just a crummy.
He was an Iron Fist villain originally, which means I want to see him when they bring Iron Fist back on Disney Plus. I guess
Since you never saw him again on an Iron Fist comic, yeah, sure, that's appropriate. Like his one and only appearance.
Oh,
was
okay,
Iron Fist.
okay.
Iron Fist number 14 is his first appearance, by the way.
This guy, I remember this getting such an awesome laugh the first time I saw it when Wolverine flips Cyclops off with the middle claw.
You know what I do not like with these X-Men movies is that they've used Rogue as the Jubilee character.
Oh, I literally said that before you came on.
Oh,
Again, William, you keep denying it. You keep denying this. Like again,
Because
it's like we're linked. It's mentally linked.
Yeah.
it's like the two different characters.
Yeah. Well, and Jubilee, it's like she's like she's in the background in like the classroom scene in this movie, and she's got I think she's got like a quick little cameo in X2, but that's about it for her in the whole X-Men franchise.
And she doesn't really look like freaking Jubilee. Jubilee's like short hair and everything like that.
And she has
She
like
looks like
her powers. Yeah,
she looks like a J-pop star.
Yeah, she kind of does. Yeah. Now also this is okay. Breaking out the martial arts nerd in me because it's definitely very appropriate to these fight scenes here. Obviously this is Ray Park. As Toad, this is his first big thing after Phantom Menace. Ray Park, he's of course is a wushu and northern Shaolin kung fu exponent. He's renowned in the martial arts world. He's also been seen in things like he was recently a couple years ago was an Accident Man with Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White, and it's really awesome in that. Yeah, I'm only referring to them because they're in a movie with Toad, dude. Okay. No, but also when it comes to like the fight scenes in X-Men, they decide that they want to bring a little bit of a Hong Kong influence. So Corey Yuen, who is of course he actually just passed away recently. I believe from COVID. So rest in peace, Corey. He's well known in the Hong Kong world for his work as fight coordinator. He worked all the time with Jet Li. He was also did a lot with Jason Statham early on in the Transporter movies, so he was definitely a legend in the Hong Kong action movie world. And brought on as the fight coordinator for the first X-Men, and he also had a bit of he had an assistant some people may have heard of by the name of Mr. Ki Hui Kwan. This was when Ki had kind of stepped back from being in front of the camera. This between in that period when again he stepped back from acting and before he came back from Everything Everywhere All at Once. But he was also the assistant stunt coordinator. You can actually see like it's circulating all over like social media. You can see the footage of like Key helping coordinate the fight scenes in the Statue of Liberty here. So Key did that, and he also would work with Corey again a year later on the one with Jet Li. So this is kind of what Key was up to when he was sort of out of the spotlight for a little while there. So yeah, I just gave very, very pertinent martial arts related trivia to the making of X-Men, and none of it had anything to do with that other movie that I mention all the time that you make fun of me for.
Yeah, sure. Google those people for those of you watching who have never heard of who those people are.
You mean the Academy Award winner Ki Hui Kwan?
Google is your friend.
No, the other 90% of the people you mentioned that are good. You're like, what? Who?
By the way, also Toad. This was Toad's kind of an example of like how kind of casual the X-Men franchise would get continuity wise, because he's in Days of Future Past. You see him pretty much at this age in 1974. So they you can see how they kind of like started like really not trying to like match up their continuity like with any kind of like real commitment. Yes, and of course the Halle Berry one-liner heard around the world. What happens to a Toad when struck by lightning? Same thing that happens to everything else. And William, this like Halle Berry, she was around for a little bit before this, but this I think was kind of her big break, wasn't it, Storm?
It's definitely up there because I know she didn't win the Academy Award till the next year.
Yeah, because it's not like she was like unknown at this point, but she was on the come up. But this was like kind of what really pushed her over.
She actually had some hits. She was in some hits. She was in the Flintstones, which was big for her. She was in CB4, which was big. Boomerang was huge. Last Boy Scout was huge. Jungle Fever was huge.
Yeah, she did like one or two with Spike Lee and Wesley Snipes, right?
Yeah, those I just get in Patrick Swayze. Why Do Fools Fall in Love? She was huge. In X-Men and in Swordfish. So she was actually legit star, and that's what I mean. You took somebody who was in the '90s, was in the Wesley Snipes neighborhood as far as the type of demo, and she was on her way up with high-end movies. And then you see after that, because some of these movies she made were done before. I think she was already filming Monsters Ball while she, before this was even done.
Yeah.
So she went up and she was on the rise to that point. But I think her biggest roles would have been in the early '90s.
Yeah, and this is 25 years later, and she doesn't look any different.
Yeah, she's pretty. She has not cracked.
Oh yeah.
I prefer Rebecca Romaine as Mystique over
Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. I mean, Jennifer, her best turn as Mystique is definitely in Days of Future Past. But you could tell, by the time we get to Dark Phoenix, you could tell she is so checked out by that point, and the makeup is so half-assed in that movie.
Yeah, she had a lot of reactions to that makeup. They had to really change the way because she was allergic. She broke out with an allergic reaction to the
I'm not blaming her. When with these like really extensive makeup jobs, I mean, I'm not holding it against anybody for what they.
She's covered from head to toe when you first see her.
So, actually, that's kind of interesting too, because I mean, as far as like what Mystique will be when we see her in the MCU, because these days, obviously they could do motion capture. They just put the dots on your face and they just change it however they want to. So. I don't know. Do you think that might be like how they might kind of spare some of the actors a little bit of the makeup cheer torture with like okay, we'll just like dots, CGI, there you go.
That's probably going to be the best way to do it because, like I said, you're going to be people are moving in ways that they were not moving 25 years ago as far as what your expectations are, and to be in all that makeup and stuff, and where you can overlay it. Like same thing with the thing. Some of the thing is practical effects, but most of it is CGI. So where they can do it, they'll do it. Where they can't, they'll probably just stick to CGI.
One, especially with it was Mystique because she's a shapeshifter, so that might be even more advantageous for her.
Yeah.
Or they can do what they did with Wicked and have spray on makeup instead of actually painting it on.
Or now they can just literally outright change the color of somebody.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that, Aaron, because actually I just had also one that was a Wicked related. I'll go ahead and DM that to you. Yeah, so you go get a kick out of this. Yeah, I just sent you that one.
Cool.
By the way, this is also the whole thing with the radiation, mutant machine. I actually thought that wasn't a bad way to kind of like canonically show in this franchise. This is how Rogue gets her white lock of hair. Because they even bring that back in X2 and Wolverine or Magneto and Mystique are kind of like chuckling about, oh, we love what you've done with your hair, and she starts taking her gloves off. All right, it's like, you want to fuck around? Let's see if you find out. Yeah.
it's funny because their relationship in the comics, and that matter of fact, they just they have the Savage Land comic that they're doing now. Back when they're telling a version of the story, this is where her and Magneto first get real close, and they would eventually, in alternate universes, have a kid together. And because of the way Magneto can use his powers, he was able to make it so that Rogue could touch him in order for them to be able to co-produce.
Yeah, that's another thing. They will, as far as like Rogue romance wise, because I mean, her the movies like establish her romance with Iceman, but I mean, canonically, of course, her romance, her love is Gambit. So it'll be
Until they
interesting.
retcon Gambit as being the guy who started the Mutant Massacre, one of these dumbest movies. That was so stupid.
And,
Well,
and,
William,
and they made they made Bobby gay.
yeah, that's true.
In
Yeah.
comics.
He was also made him an accountant too. That's what he goes to in the comics. He goes to college and becomes an accountant. It's like, I think he went from an X-Men to accountant. It's interesting.
Yeah. That shot there when he did
Oh my god.
That 360.
Oh, Aaron, are you seeing? You're seeing what I shared there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I told you you'd like it. I told you. For those of you who don't know, it's like I had an article I shared there that I had go up on Comic Book where it's somebody did like this mashup of like the Spider-Man kind of scene Spider-Man where the Green Goblin tries to get Spider-Man to join him, but they take that scene and they overlay Defying Gravity over that. So somebody they had a little bit of fun with that. So we did a little feature on that in a comic book. I think this is right there. I think that's the first time in the movies that Wolverine calls somebody bub. Now, William, Sabretooth has the healing factor too, so there really is no reason why he couldn't have survived that, right?
It depends. It takes him, depending on the injury, it would take you.
Come on,
there's different values. Like Deadpool can heal from a molecular level, whereas you can still kill Wolverine and
note to Sony.
Spider-Man Wicked crossover.
Spider-Man After Dark. Spider-Man After Dark. You can put on Netflix. It'll be fine.
Yes. You can sell it to Netflix. Oh, I just had to get that in.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Let's see. I know how to push buttons, don't I?
Yes, you do.
Okay, now I remember the first time I saw this. I didn't quite like when Wolverine jumps down inside of the machine to stop it. At first, I thought, okay, now he could heal from this, but those rings, you try to jump through, you just get sliced in two. But no.
Well, remember his skeleton. His skeleton is gonna break those blades.
Well, not just that also, but like as far as him like jumping in and not stopping like the blades as he jumps in. If you look at the top, there is actually a bit of a gap between the rings and the top portion. So there is actually like a window there you could jump through, as the rings are spinning. Yeah, William, I mentioned when you stepped away too. I actually thought this was kind of a clever way, also in the with what happens to Rogue. They're like establishing this is how she gets her white lock of hair. It's like that. I thought this was pretty clever. It's like kind of tying that to trauma.
Wasn't she born like that?
Yeah, well, like in the movie, she doesn't have her white streak at the beginning, so it shows like as she's like being weaponized
it's
here.
It's a birthmark is what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And she has it the first time you see her when she has like a mullet hair. I have some of those comics here.
Yeah, and also I mentioned when you stepped away, William, this movie is unfortunately
That's I heard you
date.
with the Twin Towers. Yeah.
Yeah, that is an unfortunate dating of this, especially because it says in the opening credits like in the not too distant future, and they don't even really maintain that over the franchise. I think that's kind of been abandoned, is where it's like X-Men is more or less like present day. Because I remember when I first saw this when it said not too distant future, I kind of always read that as like this is like 5 years in the future. But again, they never really maintain that, so I sort of I think that's been kind of like a subtle retcon. It's like it's more or less modern times.
This probably would Wolverine would do something like that in the comics.
Oh yeah,
for
yeah.
Rose.
Oh, 100%, yeah. I mean, if you've ever read Old Man Logan, which was the basis for Logan the movie, he is so devoted to the X-Men. What happens in that? That's an Elseworlds or a multiverse story. What happens in that is Mysterio. It creates this illusion where Wolverine, thinks that the X-Men are like all the different Marvel villains, and he spends hours like fighting all of them in the X Mansion, just slaughtering all of them. And then Mysterio kind of pulls back the curtain, and Wolverine realizes he has killed all of the X-Men in that, and he is so destroyed by that. He goes and he lays his head on a train track and lets the train run over him. And he tells the story to Hawkeye, and Hawkeye tells him, "You would survive that." And he's like, "Yeah, I know, but the only penance I could pay for that, it was just suffering the pain of that kind of just decapitation." So yeah, he would absolutely he's very devoted to his fellow mutants and fellow X-Men. He would absolutely make a sacrifice like this for them.
And essentially, the X-Men is like a family.
Yep,
it's the only one he's ever had.
You might call it like Marvel's second family. Now, as far as kind of like Hugh Jackman's career after this, because this was very, very much his big break. And actually, you might know that originally Doug Ray Scott was going to play Wolverine. He was initially cast, and then there was like a scheduling overlap with Mission Impossible 2, so he wasn't able to do it. So, and Hugh Jackman had already been in consideration previously, but when that happened, then he was kind of brought back, and they said, okay, let's. And they were 3 weeks into filming at that point, I think, but that ended up being pretty good stroke of fortune for Hugh Jackman. He's actually, I remember this one interview too, because he's obviously very associated with musicals and musical theater. He was asked, I think, at one point, which is harder, X-Men, playing Wolverine, or musicals, because Wolverine, obviously, that calls upon him. He just gets in absurd shape for that. And for like a lot of other things he's done that require a lot of physicality. And he said actually musicals are a lot harder, a lot more taxing, because he said, and I think the way he put it was, it's it's all the physical demands of X-Men plus your singing is basically the way he described it. So I guess that's a little bit encouraging. Anybody who's got a dream of playing the X-Men Wolverine, know that it's not going to be as hard as doing musicals. If nothing else.
Fun fact: the guy who plays Bobby, his twin brother.
Yep.
Played Jimmy Olsen in.
Smallville. Oh yeah, on Smallville, yeah. The show that William hates. Oh, and by the way, William, I'm going to drive you even crazier now with that comparison because the X-Men mansion in the X-Men franchise, it's the same mansion that is used for the Luthor Manor on Smallville and for Oliver Queen's house on Arrow.
Good for it that it was on something that people actually watched, which is this movie. So there you go.
It's trivia.
Oh.
I share trivia. It is trivia.
All you guys really do when you bring up Smallville is just make me grateful about what we have now, and that we don't longer have to embarrass ourselves with
I'm a
garbage
Gotham,
that show was.
fan.
Yes, Gotham Girl. Yes.
Gotham.
fan.
If Smallville was the turds swirling around the toilet, then Gotham was the piss that went in the toilet.
Aaron, I apologize on behalf of my co-host.
Both those hand-me-down shows.
So, are you saying
I
a
call them
female
halfway shows.
using
I call them halfway efforts because they didn't want to go all the way and actually make a show. But let's do some halfway shit that just kind of like let you know that okay, it's recognizable, but not really. Especially Smallville's story. I can't believe you guys. Why leave Smallville? Why leave Smallville if everybody's going to be in the damn? If everybody in Metropolis is going to be in that damn movie or show.
Okay, so this is really good too because we're at the chess game in Magneto's plastic prison. This is actually a really good way to end it because this was this isn't like quite a cliffhanger, but it left you with an appetite for more X-Men. So this the whole chess game and
which by the way, this wasn't guaranteed we were getting another one of these movies.
Yeah. It was still this was back before they in superhero movies. This is back before they like locked actors into like a 3-picture deal. William, that's actually kind of why this is really a good way that they wrapped it up on because it's a not quite cliffhanger because it does tease further X-Men movies, but it doesn't tease it in a way where it's like anything specific. It's just
they could have left it here.
If there had been no more X-Men movies, this would have told a complete story still.
But the math said yes. This movie made almost $300 million,
which that was enormous from back then.
And this movie gave birth to a true bromance between Ian McKellen
and Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, Patrick Stewart.
And I always loved how he knocks over the king there. I have no idea how this bridge works though, where it looks like it's like it looks like saran wrap, but it's like the base is like solid enough to like walk on. And how quickly did they get this plastic prison built to like right after they caught Magneto?
Probably, yeah. By the way, a plastic prison wouldn't really work.
Yeah.
It's like, I know it sounds cool that it would, but it wouldn't. That's not how his powers work. It's funny because they do this a lot in these movies, and they still do them.
Well, they do in the second in Last Stand where they hold the plastic guns shooting the cure darts.
Well, and then you look at what was it? Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, where Black Bolt dies.
Yep.
I'm like, are you seriously? And am I sitting here in this theater, and that's how you think you can kill Black Bolt?
Funny enough, Richard Donner was executive producer on this.
Yeah. They were on all the X-Men movies up until he passed away.
It feels gross to see Bryan Singer.
Oh yeah. Well, not only that, Aaron, but I mean, Joss Whedon has a couple lines in this where it's like the whole thing about prove it's you, Wolverine, you're a dick, and I think the what happens to a toe when struck by, I think that was him too. So I mean,
like I said, people who will watch this movie and not know one.
Don't focus on them. Think about Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart and Halle Berry and all those wonderful people.
Birds of a feather.
Well, the movie did you enjoy the movie? If you enjoyed the movie, you enjoyed the movie. It's what it is. Like, I mean, I'm not going to not like Seven or Usual Suspects because Kevin Spacey was in it.
Well, the thing is, Kevin Spacey is a unique position because he's actually gone to court and
That's
won
true,
the
yeah.
court cases and that. So he's done his like court,
Well, he still has
Had
some
it-
left, but yeah.
and
But
he
it's
won.
the stigma of it, the general public is like,
Yeah, he's still got the Scarlet Letter on it. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
but here's the thing, though, we care about that. And the people who work in Hollywood, that's going to be as big as issues if anybody will work with them in Hollywood. But as far as these movies being viable entertainment, just like Buffy, I mean, people are like, they don't dive into this stuff that like we do. Yeah, they go to the movie, they watch the movie, and if they like it, they come back for another movie. Not we're terminally online sometimes to the point where we don't allow ourselves the luxury of just being aloof and oblivious sometimes.
It's better to be ignorant to all this stuff.
Yeah, because you know what?
Than
The
they
more
were
I
pro.
dive in, okay, that was X-Men, by the way. Most important comic
Yes, it
movie
was.
ever made, in my opinion. The more I dive into these things, the more you realize that there are assholes everywhere. I mean, you won't have any fun. You won't be able to buy anything. You won't be able to read anything. Everything you watch, do, consume. Trust me, there's more than a few assholes in there that are probably done worse things than the people that you would avoid, that you think you're avoiding. You avoid one asshole, you run into the arms of another. So, yeah, at some point I want to pull back and be like, it's just I want to enjoy the product and then let the system do what the system does. Yeah, the most important movie, like I said, not the greatest comic book movie. Make sure you guys who are watching later on don't conflate with that. There's a difference between the groundbreaking in the importance of X-Men and the quality that would or would not age over the last 25 years. But a lot of the people, go look at those credits in those movies and match them up with a lot of the stuff that's going on today. One big name in particular, obviously. And this is where the guts of this is where the risks were taken. And it would get better. As each of these movies, for the most part, there were some letdowns, but there's letdowns in the modern era. But as the comic book movie apparatus grew from 2000 to 2008, by the time that they got to 2008, the engine was primed. One of the main reasons, what I say this before, that the MCU was able to get off to the start that they got is the Marvel brand. Even though it wasn't Marvel Studios, that Marvel brand, that Marvel logo had been on things for 8 years. And for the most part, with some few exceptions, for the most part, quality stuff. That includes the Spider-Man movie, all of which made $700 million. That includes this movie that at that time for near $300 million on the budget it was made. Those were blockbusters. So you were able to roll in with many of the same personnel that made these movies and found Marvel Studios, and then the rest is history. So there you go. I like those two better than this one, but like I said, this one, quality wise, you can make an argument for any of these movies, but important wise, there's well, I thought she was miscast as Rogue. I thought Rogue's personality, at least I thought the way they had her act the character wasn't consistent with what I know.
Well, again, like Aaron and I, again, being so linked up, the as we point out, again, it feels like they wrote Jubilee and they just gave her Rogue's name in a lot of ways.
Well, once again, Jubilee at the time was a very popular X-Men. She was a popular X-Men amongst young Asians. She was one of the first X-Men. I believe, other than Sunflower, she was the first Asian X-Men to be prominently on the team. Sunflower wasn't even on there that long. So Jubilee came along, and Jubilee came along in one of the best eras of the '90s, where Jim Lee and Chris Claremont were writing, from X-Men like 266 all the way up to 275, were some of the best things that they did towards their relationship. And those are what the sales from those were what turned around and got you X-Men #1 with Jim Lee and Chris Claremont, which at that time was the best selling comic of all time. It's still up there. Unfortunately, as good as that was, it's one of those things that gave the comic industry, it gave them the wrong message that said, okay, this is going to sell, a lot of copies. Let's print a bunch of everything else. And to this day, right now, this comic, so much, there's so many of these in circulation that you would think a comic that is 34 years old in this condition would probably be, when you think, an X-Men #1, it's worth letting out. It's easily attainable because there's so many of them out there. But yeah, that's Jubilee came along in that era with X-Men's commercial height, and a lot of people connected, and then she would be on cartoons and everything else. But her relevance as far as the story should have been like way down the line. Iceman is completely misplaced in this franchise when you look at it in retrospect. But once again, they did what they felt they needed to do to sell this movie. If they had an MCU infrastructure, they would have been able to tell a more complete and full story from beginning to end. But they did what they needed to do to get this franchise off the ground. Now Kevin Feige has it back in his hands, and now I look forward to him telling a more complete, fleshed out X-Men universe, which I think he will.
Alrighty.
Even Logan is not so okay. All right.
Okay, now you're.
That lets me know I need to end the stream. All right, guys.
Right.
I don't know. I have all the topics and everything ready for the Saturday night show. I just got to decide when I'm going to air it because I might be watching or on Vodka stream while I'm doing the chamber. So
yeah, I got Elimination Chamber up anyway. So.
Be advised, it could be around 10 o'clock. It could be around 10 o'clock, and it might be a compacted show. I don't know. Our topics tonight are we're going to have a really quick topic about the new Superman, the Snow Feet promo, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about
that's gonna be fun.
More. Oh no, because we're not getting into the bullshit. We're gonna talk Green Lantern. Like I said, guys, when we talk these DCU characters, I'm literally I'm gonna focus on what we're talking about. The grievances, take them somewhere else. I just don't have time for them, and I'm going to ignore it. I'm warning you ahead of time. If you come in with the whole baggage, the DC baggage, I'm just going to ignore you. So we're going to talk about that real quick because it doesn't justify more than 5 minutes. So it is on the thumbnail, but it's not a big thumbnail. We are going to talk the alternative wave that hit the 90s, and for me, changed music forever. Especially where it was at, going from the hair bands, the metal band, and then going into the 90s, the grunge era, the post-grunge era. We're going to talk about that in general. What else were we going to talk? I was going to talk about Absolute Universe, but we still got one more book that hits its number 5 this week, and I'm going to save that for next week. Superman 5 hits next week, and it'll be the last of the original ones.
I literally just went today. Go ahead, Talia.
I was going to say, I'm excited for the what's it called? Trade paperback to be released.
Yeah,
for Absolute Superman.
Yeah, it goes into solicitation, and in fact, it's already in solicitation. They just don't have a release date until. I
literally just today. I literally just went to my local comic store and got Wonder Woman 5. So I've literally just today got the completion of I already had Batman.
I have it. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah,
we were going to talk literally Elimination Chamber, which is literally happening right now. I'm about to leave you guys for that, and then we're also going to do the comic book story. Is going to be it's a new comic. It's not safe for work. It's called Pop Kill. It's a comic I just picked up the other day, and I'm selling it very well, and it's kind of cool. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to have to censor some of the stuff because there's a lot of nudity in it. I'll give you the premise, but it's on the thumbnail. It's a big part of the thumbnail. When I picked it up the other day, I'm like, we got to talk about this. This needs to be a movie. That's what kind of comic this is. So, and like I said, I can already start plotting the sleazy people I could see to direct it. But all right, guys, that's going to be what we do tonight. I don't know what time because I got Elimination Chamber, which I want to pay attention to, and then like I said, depending on if I get a link from Film Junkie, I'll be on there. But I will be cutting I won't be on there all night. I'm going to cut it to where because Film Junkie can go like 10 hours. At some point,
we've done 12 on New Year's Eve, man. So
we didn't have another show backed up. I don't want to keep you guys waiting on a Saturday night. So have fun. Thank you guys for being here. Please like, subscribe, share. For those of you newbies, the parts where it looks like Brad's talking but there's no sound is because I edited or muted whatever he was saying. So there's nothing wrong with the stream other than him. So we will see you at some point tonight. But like I said, tomorrow night is just going to be another Sunday night. We're back on our Sunday night schedule. As far as I don't know if I'm going to do a stream as far as like movie goes, or if I'm going to do, depending on how much we have to talk about tonight. A lot of times the Sunday night show is kind of compromised because we get it all out of our system on Saturday night. But hey, all right, please like, subscribe, share it, and I will see you at some point in the next show. See, now I got to edit that out.
Thank you, Taladia.
Yeah.
Now I got to edit that out. Well, see, it's not as hard with you because you're not on camera, so nobody can see your lips moving when I delete it. Bye.
Bye.